Hello, I'm Tony Perkins, President of the Family Research Council here in Washington, D.C. Behind me is the National Archives building, home of the Declaration of Independence, the document that started our journey as a nation. Its closing words are profound. We pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Tonight, we're not asking you to pledge your life, your fortune, or your honor, but I am asking you to make a pledge. Let me explain. I came to the Family Research Council after having served as a state legislator in my home state of Louisiana. As one who has worn the uniform of a United States Marine and a police officer, but most importantly, I'm a husband and now father of 5 children, I came here to help Christians influence this city that was once dominated by Christian influence. As I travel, I hear the questions Christians are asking. Is there hope for America? Are we too far gone? Can we really change the direction of our country? Trust me, as long as there is a God in heaven, there is hope here on earth. The real question is, will we do our part to influence America? And that is exactly what iPledge Sunday is all about. It's a call to Bible-believing Christians across America to faith, family, and freedom. Many Christians today don't understand the foundational role that Christianity and the Bible have played in America's success. It is an incredible story, but it's now missing from public school textbooks, and sadly, it's missing from many church pulpits. If more of us understood the connection between our faith and our freedom, we would not so easily cast biblical principles aside when choosing our leaders or even passing legislation or educating our children. We now see the results of ignoring these biblical principles. We ignored biblical principles on economics, and now we have almost $16 trillion in debt. We ignored biblical principles about the family, and then divorce, abortion, and the redefinition of marriage became more and more acceptable. We ignore biblical principles about God-given rights, and our first freedom, religious liberty, becomes expendable. iPledge Sunday is about changing that. iPledge Sunday is a call back to faith, family, and freedom. So let's get started. I'm going to turn things over now to my good friend Dr. Mark Harris, standing by live at First Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Pastor Mark, you get us started in the call to faith, family, and freedom.
Well, thank you, Tony. We are excited to welcome you into the sanctuary of First Baptist Church, Charlotte, North Carolina, and literally all around the country, more than 2,500 churches and small groups are gathering together, and we want to welcome you. In fact, why don't you reach out and give all of those folks that are joining us here a warm First Baptist welcome, would you? Right here into our sanctuary on this incredible night. Indeed, this very evening, we're reminded that our faith, our family, and our freedom bring us here to this place. This is a service. It's not a rally. It's not a political rally, but rather it's a time for us to let God speak to our hearts and for our hearts to be challenged. You see, I'm reminded in the day in which we live of a quote from Charles Finney, who was an incredible noted preacher and evangelist during a great awakening that took place in this country. And I want you to hear these words even as we begin this meeting tonight. He said, and I quote, "It seems sometimes," Finney wrote, "as if the foundations of our nation are becoming rotten, and Christians seem to act as if they think God does not see what they do in politics. But I tell you," he concludes, "He does see it. And He will bless or curse this nation according to the course Christians take in politics." End quote.
Please welcome the producer of the feature film, Monumental, Kirk Cameron.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here with you and all of you who are watching in your churches and in your homes, to be together with so many godly people, leaders. I'm here with my pastor, and we are privileged to be a part of iPledge Sunday. Thank you all for joining us. I made a documentary this last year, which was really a new foray for me into the world of producing. I've never done this before, and it was quite a learning experience. This was something that really came out of my own concern for the world my 6 children are walking into. And because of my love for my children, I want a great future for them. And when I look around, now that I'm paying attention as a father, I see that all signs are saying panic, aren't they? Economically, we're $16 trillion in debt. Morally, it's frightening to see what happens. Just go down to our local public school or our mall and take a look and see if this is the direction we want our children to continue to go. Spiritually, the things that are happening in our world and in our nation are devastating to stand by and watch. And so I turn on the news to try to figure out, what can we do about this? What can I do about this as a father? And I find that, unfortunately, most people I see are playing the blame game. And I see the right blaming the left, and the left blaming the right, the rich blaming the poor, and the poor blaming the rich, government blaming big business, and businesses blaming the government. And then to top it off, the church is blaming the media for the problems, and Hollywood blames religion for all of the ills of the world. And I'm thinking, wait, I'm getting confused. I need to hear a clear voice that's going to direct us out of the wilderness to a place of blessing for our children and their future. Where do we find it? And I'm thinking, maybe it's simpler than all of this that I'm hearing. Perhaps we've simply forgotten what made us such a great nation in the first place. Could it be that simple? And our forefathers left us a reset button, knowing we'd get off track so that we could return to original factory settings if that were ever to occur. And they left it for us in the form of the largest granite monument in the United States of America. And most people have never heard of it. Have you? It's 81 feet tall, 180 tons of granite, making it the largest solid granite monument in the United States of America. And it's sitting on top of a hill in Massachusetts, and most people have never heard of it. It's called the Monument to the Forefathers. Let me explain it to you. Her name is Faith. She stands 81 feet tall with her finger pointed to heaven. She has a star on her forehead representing wisdom, and in her left hand she's holding the Geneva Bible. That is the Bible the Pilgrims brought over on the Mayflower. Under her was the expression of our forefathers' faith. They believed you must start with faith. And that expression would first be an internal transformation. It wouldn't be a top-down moralizing of people. It would be an internal transformation of the heart. And so below her platform is the first corner called morality. And morality is seated there with the 10 Commandments in one hand and the scroll of Revelation in the other hand. To her right is the prophet Moses holding the 10 Commandments, and to her left is, etched in granite, the evangelist penning the Gospels. This is the source of their morality, the Word of God and the Gospels. Then, once you had an internal transformation of the heart, you move to the left and you find law. Now, law is critical because to have civility in society, your morality, your good and evil, must be formalized into laws to protect the good and the innocent and to hold back the evil. And these laws were marked on the right by justice, and there was justice with the scales and the sword, indicating that the punishment must fit the crime. They must be fair laws. And on her left is mercy. And so you have justice and mercy giving a biblical view of law. And as the man law is opening the law book, his law book is directly under the higher law that is written in stone and can never be changed. And then finally, if you had civility in your society based on the right standard of morality, which was produced by faith in the true God and in His Word, you were then able to educate your children. And education is seated at the third corner. And she's there with a wreath of victory around her head. She's holding tablets, and to her right is a mother educating her child. And it says youth, training up her youth in the way they should go, so that, as indicated on her left, when he's old, he'll not depart from it. And finally, the fourth corner is the result of following this matrix of liberty, and you come to Liberty Man. And Liberty Man is there, a soldier seated in his chair. The sword is put back in its sheath. He is done fighting. He has slain the beast of tyranny. And to his left is his wife. Her name is Peace, and she's holding a cornucopia overflowing with bounty and plenty and blessing. This is the strategy for building and maintaining a free and just society by our forefathers. We've got the strategy. We've got the playbook. We just need to go back to running them again. One of our political parties right now is wondering if the name of God should be in the platform. According to our forefathers, God is the platform.
Coming up on iPledge Sunday, we'll hear from Senator Rick Santorum and Star Parker.
The economy is in shambles.
People are losing jobs, money is inflating, businesses are closing down.
I have to live with my parents to make ends meet.
I fear that everything we love and everything that we cherish, everything that we hold dear, all our freedoms, all our potential is seriously in jeopardy. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop.
Yes, the spending frenzy in Washington needs to stop. We need to get government out of our business, out of our health care, and let bureaucrats know we don't want them to manage our lives. Prosperity does not come from expanding the reach and size of government, nor is it the product of the redistribution of wealth, but instead, it is the result of hardworking, personally responsible, creative, and free individuals. You know, we need to ask ourselves, where has out-of-control government spending taken us? The answer rests with you and with me. Our founding fathers rebelled against taxation without representation. We don't have that problem. Men and women that we elect to public office, our representatives, determine the future of our nation. Our future and the future of our children and grandchildren is at stake. It's time to take responsibility for our future, the future of our children and the future of our neighbors. Pray, prepare, and participate.
I'm Star Parker. For some reason, far too many Americans have accepted that economic issues are separate and apart from what we call social and moral issues. Issues like traditional marriage and abortion. However, the Lord of the universe never got this message. The 10 Commandments, in addition to addressing family and murder, address theft and covetousness. Central to a free society and a godly nation is a nation in which private property is respected, in which it is not permissible to steal. Central to socialism is the disregard of private property, that government and politicians can decide what is right and fair and take from some and redistribute to others. Socialist societies are atheist societies. In a godly nation, not only do we respect our neighbor's property, but our interest in our neighbor is not out of envy of what they have, but reflects our love and concern for man made in the image of his creator. Socialism is a formula for economic failure. Capitalism, coupled with a love of God and respect for his commandments, is a formula for economic success. It is critical that the church community, the body of Christ, understands that the sanctity of private property is as sacred as the sanctity of life and marriage.
Please welcome Senator Rick Santorum.
The economy is important,
The economy is very important to people. We have to be able to feed and clothe and house and get to places. But America is more than stuff. Our founders said so in that founding document. When they talked about rights, unalienable rights, rights that can't be taken from you, given away, that are attached to us. Why? Because we are creatures of a loving God. And what were those rights? Life, liberty, freedom. To do what? To pursue happiness. And we think of happiness today and we think of, well, pleasure, enjoyment, things that make you feel good. That's what we're taught. That's what the popular culture teaches us. That's why you go to work, so you can have fun, you can enjoy, instead of work for the sense of work, serving God's will. But our founders understood better. And when they said pursuit of happiness, go back and read the dictionary definition of happiness at the time of our founders. And what will you find? You will find that our founders understood, as the people at that time did, that true happiness comes from doing what you ought to do, doing what God has called you to do. And that's what they meant. To use the freedom God has given you to do what you ought to do, to pursue God's will, and thus build a great and just society from the bottom up. To use your industry to build it from the bottom up. And we understood that the basic building block of that society, that economy, if you go look up the word economy, it comes from the Greek word oikos, which means family and household. The basis of the economy in this, not just this country, but in every country, is the family. It is the basic building block of our society. And when that building block is fractured, when that cornerstone is broken, or never even cemented into the building, the structure above it crumbles. And that's where we are in America today. The hopelessness that you're seeing, the want that you're seeing, yes, it's economic, but it's mostly because of the brokenness of the lives and the families and the communities. Because now 40% of our children are born out of wedlock. Now roughly half of people over the age of 18 are married. That's down from 75% just 30 years ago. The family is coming apart, and it is no wonder the economy is crumbling. We cannot rebuild this economy and create opportunities for all, for those who are being left behind. Those left behind at the bottom of the income scale, those who are working in lower and middle income jobs. Do you know, if you look at the income and you take the top 20% of those income earners in America, 85% of them are married. Less than 40% at the bottom are married. The people at the top don't preach what they practice, which is marriage, families, moms and dads raising children are at the heart of economic success in America. And unless we are willing to stand up from this pulpit and from pulpits around the country and from lectors at political debates around this country and stand up for the family and for marriage, we will not have a society that is rich and prosperous on any level, much less economic. Our founders, as Tony quoted, mutually pledged to each other at the end of the Declaration of Independence. Mutually pledged to each other. See, that's how we do it in America. I'm sure we got some Marines out there. And when you're in the foxhole, you love your country, but you're mutually pledging to each other in that foxhole. Look at the people next to you, here in this room, listening across this country. Mutually pledge. Don't just say, I'll do it. Don't just say, I'll pray, I'll participate, I'll prepare. Don't just say it. Look at the person next to you. Pledge to each other before God that you will do what is necessary at the turning point in American history, which is, in my opinion, this election. Feel blessed because you are here at a time when your country needs you.
You know, some might be surprised to find out that the Bible has a lot to say about the economy and about money. In fact, Proverbs 22:7 says, the borrower is servant to the lender. And that's a clear warning. And I'm sure that you are probably aware that this week, we, America, now has a national debt of over $16 trillion and counting. Now, a lot of that debt is to foreign nations. And being in debt to other nations makes it difficult, if not impossible, for America to lead internationally on issues such as religious freedom, on human trafficking, and working for peace around the globe. America's debt problem is a moral and a spiritual problem, and it's getting worse. And I'm not sure that we can work our way out of this on our own. This morning in my quiet time, I was reading an account of Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, and Judah found themselves surrounded with multiple threats and no way out. And this is what they said: we have no power against this great multitude that is coming against us, nor do we know what to do, but our eyes are upon you, speaking of God. If there was ever a time in this nation that our eyes needed to be upon God, it is now. And I want to challenge you to pledge to pray for this nation. I don't know if I mentioned it, but there's a website, iPledgeToVote.org. If you didn't write that down until I see everybody writing it down across America, I'm going to keep repeating it. iPledgeToVote.org. Go to iPledgeToVote.org, click on Tools, and then Special Partner Resources, and there are several ministries that are calling Americans and the church in particular to pray coming up to this election, and we're partnering with them, and I hope you will too.
Next on iPledge Sunday, Bishop Harry Jackson.
For nearly a generation, we've neglected marriage, leaving it nearly defenseless to homosexual activists who are now trying to redefine marriage out of existence. Same-sex marriage, it contradicts God's will as revealed in the creative order. Violating God's law only brings pain and heartache. Right is called wrong, and evil is called good. It is because we have yielded moral authority to the demands of special interest or the ruling of some aberrant judge. And as a result, all of society suffers. The mother-father parenting arrangement is the one most conducive to the well-being of children, which is the key to a healthy and prosperous society.
The beginning of 2005, our son Jacob was going into kindergarten, and he came home with a book entitled Who's in a Family, and that introduces children to same-sex households. We realized that the intention of the administrators and teachers was to affirm these relationships and gay marriage in the minds of children. When we went into the school, what we requested is parental notification when these issues are brought up by adults within the school, and the option to opt our child out of this type of indoctrination.
She had checked with the administrators and they had said that this was not a parental notification issue.
And I said, I'm prepared to sit here all night until I see some form of accommodation as a parent. The accommodation they gave was to put me in handcuffs and send me to jail.
I couldn't believe that they were willing to arrest my husband. I just wanted parental notification. We want to raise our children to know God and to know His truth.
I felt I didn't have a choice at that point. In order to fulfill my role and duty as a father,
despite what the media would have you believe, this does not have to be America's future. The future of marriage is up to you. Your vote can determine the language of your state constitution, and the people we elect in our representative form of government will pass the laws and appoint the judges who may decide the final outcome. Get involved. Vote your values, your biblical values, and make a difference.
Please welcome Bishop Harry Jackson.
My black neighbor, my black friend, my Hispanic brother, my Hispanic friend, I want you to understand that you have got to vote your biblical values. You've got to decide that you're going to come off of an ideological plantation into the freedom of the liberty of the sons of God. You got to do it. You got to do it now. You've got to come out into freedom. It's a very difficult thing for some to hear. It's wonderful to think about the idea that we've got a first African-American president. And there's so many firsts that have gone on in our nation. But it's time for us to hear the voice of the Master saying that I am a Christian first and foremost. Above all, I stand for, I live for, or I'll die for Christ and Christ alone. This is the call of this hour. This is a call to biblical fidelity. We've got to believe that somehow in God's economy, the reason that the pressure is so heavy on America right now economically is that we have not been biblically faithful. God's first. That's all right. Give the Lord a clap. God's first institution is marriage. And so if we turn against Him on this situation, we then will fail. We're going to have to break out of the Democratic box and break out of the Republican box and break into a new kind of political box. It's the Christian box. It's the kingdom box. It's God's agenda. It's God's way. I want to read you one verse of Scripture before we close. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1 is the cry that we must hear. It's a battle call we must hear. The verse says, arise and shine, black America, brown America, white America, and Asian America in Christ. For your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. And it goes on to say in verse 2 that gross darkness covers the land. It has never been darker in recent history than it is right now in America. But I'm here to tell you that if we will guard the institution of marriage, if we will give ourselves to healing marriages on our watch, God will heal our nation, but we've got to do it now. There must be an urgency now. We can't wait for somebody else to do it. You and I have got to do it now. Now, 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 now. Let God arise and his enemies be scattered. Let God arise and his enemies be scattered. How many of you right here in this great auditorium will stand with me just for a moment and shout out at the top of your lungs, let God arise in America. Let God arise in America and his enemies be scattered. Let God arise in America and his enemies be scattered. God bless you, and may God be glorified in this great land he's given us.
Marriage is an issue of national importance, but it also continues to be an issue in the states. In fact, 4 states will be voting on marriage this November: Maryland, Maine, Minnesota, and Washington State. Those states will decide whether they join the other 30 that have already passed marriage amendments, and we need to express our opinions at the ballot box. So those of you across this country, in those 4 states in particular, you need to make sure that you're registered and you're voting. And so let me mention a website where you can go to, iPledgeToVote.org. And if you go to that website, click on Take Action, and then you can actually register to vote. In fact, I think we may do that right now. Let's see if we can't pull this up here on the computer. Go to iPledgeToVote.org. All right, go down to Take Action. Let's go, Take Action. All right, now we can look up to see whether we're registered to vote. Let me see, let's try George. George, that's a good name. Washington, how about that one? And then let's see, Mount Vernon, how about that? And then Virginia, let's try Virginia. Now, I know I'm from Louisiana, but I'm not encouraging the dead to vote, okay? So this is just for an example here. All right, now let's search to see if he's registered. Oh, he's not registered. He doesn't come from Chicago or Louisiana. Okay. But we can email him a form so he can register. So if you go on there, you can actually download the form, and I'm going to email him a form here. Let me put that in there. FRC1, and I'm going to email it to George Washington at President. Let's try that. Now see if he gets it. All right. And it'll send him a message to tell him that this election's important. If he's not registered, he can register. I'm going to send that. I'm not going to wait for the reply, though. So what you can do is you can send those messages to your friends as well. Check and see if 2 family members or friends, you can see if they're registered, and then send them an email right from that site, and it will go to them where they can download the form, fill it out, and all of the information of where they need to mail it is right there. It's simple, it's easy, it can be done in 5 minutes, but 5 minutes can not only save you a lot of money, it can save the country. So make sure that you go to iPledgeToVote.org.
Coming up on iPledge Sunday, James Robison and Kristen Hawkins.
Did you know over 1,200,000 unborn children are aborted every year? 22 out of every 100 children conceived will have their life ended by abortion. More than 1 out of every 5. In 2008, the total number of abortions since the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision in 1973, 54 million. That's equivalent to the entire population of the states in the Pacific time zone. Can you imagine? Everyone gone? How many doctors, pastors, teachers, scientists, moms, and dads have we lost? What great discoveries and innovations will we never know because we as a society have called a child a choice rather than a cherished blessing from God.
I'll never go to school.
I'll never play sports.
I'll never have a first kiss.
I'll never be a father.
I'll never get married.
Abortion is a terrible thing. Our founding fathers understood that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are God-given, inalienable rights. To ensure we did not lose those rights, they gave us a representative form of government that enables us to have a say in who makes our laws. On average, more than 50% of all registered voters don't vote. Does it really matter if we vote? Well, remember the 2000 presidential election? George Bush was declared the winner by a margin of just 547 individual votes. It does matter. You can make a difference if you vote. This year, 2012, could be the most important election year in the history of America. We must restore the right to life in America. But to do so, we must elect leaders who will enact laws that uphold biblical truth by protecting both the life of unborn children and the health of their mothers. Be a part of it. Vote. Vote your values, your biblical values.
I'm James Robison, and Tony Perkins, I want to thank you for including me in the iPledge Sunday. You know, I never dreamed, I imagine most of the people listening to me now never imagined that we would see what we're witnessing today, the disregard not only of God, God's standard and biblical truth, but the preciousness of life. Jesus said that as Christians, as believers, we're salt. One aspect and quality of salt is it protects the precious. Jesus says when we fail to be salt in the effective sense of the word, then it is good for nothing but to be trampled under the feet of men. We are witnessing today everything precious being mocked, scorned, and trampled under the feet of men. What could be more precious, more innocent, more worthy of protection than the unborn, totally innocent life in the womb with so much potential, so many possibilities? My story, a practical nurse, a hospice nurse, 40 years old, caring for an elderly man, found herself imposed upon by an alcoholic son of that elderly man. She was forced to have a sexual relationship. She conceived a child. Finding herself pregnant, she went to have an abortion. A doctor in Houston refused. Somehow he seemed to convince her that in her womb there were possibilities, and she reconsidered. My mother allowed me to be born, gave birth to me at age 41. I am the father of 3, the grandfather of 11. We stopped counting after 20 million people had made professions of faith in Christ, and tens of millions of people's lives have been saved around the world through our mission outreaches. Possibilities, my life. There are many people very grateful that a mother made a decision after facing a very difficult circumstance, and she gave birth to me. And I've been able to point so many people around the world to life, preciousness, and protecting the innocent.
Please welcome the Executive Director of Students for Life, Kristen Hawkins.
Since 1973, over 54 million children have been killed by legal abortion in our country. Precious children who were created in God's image and who, just like you and I, are intrinsically valuable. Yet they were thrown in the trash because their mothers were deceived. Their mothers were deceived and told, you can't have that child and continue your education. You can't have that baby and continue to feed your other babies. You can't have that baby and stay with your boyfriend, your husband, whoever. And I know, 54 million is an impossible number to get your head around. That's more deaths than all casualties of war our nation has sustained, more deaths than any disease, more deaths than Middle Passage, more deaths than the Holocaust. But think of it a different way. In fact, if you were born after January 22nd, 1973, I want you to raise your hand right now. Congratulations. Those who have raised their hands are survivors of legal abortion in our lifetime. We've survived, but a third of our generation did not. Our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, our best friends, our husbands and wives, they are missing today because of abortion. But brothers and sisters, there is reason for joy. And I hope you can see it, because the tide is turning in our nation. More Americans now than ever understand that abortion kills a human being and is morally wrong. And despite the ruthless attack against life these past 4 years in Washington, D.C., momentum is on our side. But in order to fulfill this vision of abolishing abortion and living out God's will for us, there's two things we must do. We must pray and act, guided by a courageous love. First, we must pray for those public officials who we elect and are about to elect. We must pray for those who are hurting and work actively against us every day. We must pray for the preborn, their mothers and their fathers, and those women who've already chosen abortion. And finally, we must pray to our God and ask Him where we need to engage in this epic battle. And then after we've prayed, living courageous love, we must act. We must register to vote and make sure we know when we need to vote and where we need to vote. And then we need to go to every single person sitting in our pews, in our workplace, who we know as a Christian is pro-life, and make sure they're registered to vote. And they understand they can't waste their vote this November. We have to get out on the streets, and we have to go door to door and talk to our neighbors and friends about abortion. And finally, on November 6th, we've got to get out and vote. And if you can, take the day off work and drive everybody you know who's pro-life to the polls. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the day that God is calling you. He's calling you to act courageously and to love courageously and to rise up. Rise up out of your pews, rise up off your couches, and rise up out of your dorm rooms. Because today, tomorrow, and the next day, babies are scheduled to die. His babies are scheduled to die. Your babies are scheduled to die. And there are mothers and fathers whose heartbreak is certain. And just like how our God sent His only Son to earth so He may die on a cross so that we may have everlasting life, we must begin to live our lives so that others may live. I challenge each of you today, dedicate your short time here on this earth, your life, to something bigger than yourself. Love courageously and be His hands and feet no matter what it costs you. It's our time to abolish abortion, and you survived and you were chosen. Today, I pledge to defend life always, and I hope you will do the same.
Coming up on iPledge Sunday, Pastor and City Councilman Fernando Cabrera.
Did you know an 8-year-old boy couldn't pass out candy at Christmas because they had Jesus printed on the wrapper?
A federal appeals court upheld that roadside crosses are unconstitutional.
A pastor was ordered to stop holding Bible studies
in the privacy of his own home.
A nurse was forced to participate in a late-term abortion, even though she had a written agreement that her religious convictions would be honored.
A Baton Rouge church was ordered to stop feeding homeless victims of Hurricane Katrina because they offered voluntary prayer and Bible study.
The photographer was ordered to pay nearly $7,000 after she declined to photograph a couple's same-sex marriage.
Judges have literally turned the original meaning of the First Amendment upside down. Our Constitution protects and celebrates religious liberty. It does not censor or prohibit it. A quote attributed to Patrick Henry states that the Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and our interest, end quote. Isn't it time we go back to the Constitution?
We have to be vigilant over our government. Government behaves a lot better when they know people are watching.
We, the United States, has got to raise up political leaders who will tell us the truth about the difficult decisions we're going to have to make, and we're going to have to be willing to follow the suggestions and support and elect those people.
Religious liberty is gravely threatened in America, the gravest threat it's had since the founding of this republic.
Our ability to shape our culture and our future flows from what our founders called our first freedom. How can we stop these kind of abuses? Well, elected representatives write our laws. Federal judges, appointed by the president, rule on those laws. If we want a different future, we must elect men and women who pledge to defend the original intent of the Constitution. If you value freedom and want to preserve that blessing for your children and grandchildren, get informed, go to the polls, and vote your values, your biblical values, and make a difference.
Please welcome Pastor and City Councilman Fernando Cabrera.
Mayor of New York, about a year ago, started to make a move in trying to get churches to be evicted from renting from public schools. And I started to ask myself, what is going on? Why such a frontal attack towards churches? There's something tragically wrong, and there's a deeper issue. And the deeper issue is this: there's a hidden agenda by the special groups who have seen classical, historical Christianity. Listen carefully. And I want everybody who's listening by the radio and watching by television to listen carefully, because I've been told this by the other side, that there is a master premeditated plan to stop churches from growing and mobilizing, because we are the only ones who are standing in the way. That is the fundamental critical issue facing right now, that we're facing right now. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, this iPledge, this is why Sunday, this is why what we're doing and what we're talking about here today is essential. Now, how are they doing this? Well, what they're doing is they're taking positions of power and influence to redefine and restrict religious freedom. Listen, I'm not an alarmist. I'm not a sensationalist. I consider myself somebody to be reasonable. I'm a college professor. I have a doctorate degree. I work in higher education. I'm an elected official. Well, maybe that. I'm a pastor of a church. I have traveled all over the world. But let me tell you what I'm trying to tell you here, that there's an urgency. You're hearing it here in this meeting here today, that those who proclaim to be tolerant, they're tolerant of everybody except those who they don't tolerate. And so the goal... Let me tell you what the ultimate goal is. The ultimate goal is secular humanism to become the religion of the land. And if you don't believe me, talk to the brothers, our brothers and sisters in Europe, who are now coming to America, and they sounded a clarion call because they're telling us we were caught off guard. And they're saying, Americans, please wake up. Church of the living God, please listen to this trumpet sound from this man of God. I'm telling you that it's wake up time. It's time for the church to wake up and have an awakening. It's time to rise up and be the church. It's time for the sleeping giants to arise and be counted and be bold and be fearless at this hour.
And now a special message from the founder of Samaritan's Purse, Franklin Graham.
Thank you, Tony Perkins, and thank you, Mark Harris. You know, our nation is in trouble, but I tell you what, there's hope out there. And that hope is in Jesus Christ, God's Son. You see, Jesus Christ can change the human heart. And this is what we're talking about. The heart of man needs to be changed. The heart of America has to be changed, but it starts one heart at a time. And we can't do this without God's help. And you see, the whole world is under a death sentence. You see, God says that we have all sinned and come short of God's glory, that the wages of sin is death. That's right. God has placed a death sentence over mankind, but yet God is offering that pardon, and that pardon is through Jesus Christ. And so I want to ask you to pledge your life to Jesus Christ. You see, there is no hope outside of Him. We've been talking about the need to change in politics and all the problems that we face as a nation, but I can tell you right now, a politician cannot fix the human heart. Only Christ can do that. And I would ask you to pledge your life to Jesus Christ. Put your faith and trust in Him, and then pledge to love others. You know what? We need to love other people. We're quick to criticize a person of another political party, or we're quick to criticize a person because of the way they look or the length of their hair or whatever it may be. But if we would love one another just like God loves us, if we're to love other people, and then I encourage you, pledge to pray for our leaders and for this election. Pray for everyone that is seeking the office of president or Congress or state, local level. Pray for those leaders, and then pray for those that are already in authority over us. Pray for them. And let's see what God will do at this election. We need God's help. We desperately need God's help. Our nation's in trouble, but we need God's help. But it begins with your own heart and pledging yourself to Christ and trusting Him as your Lord and Savior, praying for others, being kind to others, and praying for our nation. God bless you.
Tonight, you have seen and you have heard where our nation stands. You've heard where our nation stands economically. You've heard where we stand morally and where we stand spiritually. I think you know that everything that we hold dear, everything that our forefathers have given to us now hangs in the balance in the year 2012. We, here tonight, gathered in churches all across America, must take responsibility for our future. That's why I'm going to ask you right now to take the pledge. Tonight or tomorrow, when you can get back to your computer and go to, what's the website? iPledgeToVote.org. Very good. Folks across America, they got it here. I hope you got it there. iPledgeToVote.org. And number one, take that pledge to pray. And join with some of our partnering organizations in praying for the elections. They'll give you prayer points and they'll guide you how to pray every day. Secondly, we can't stop with prayer. Just as Jehoshaphat that I mentioned earlier in 2 Chronicles 20 called upon the Lord when the Lord answered him and told him that the battle was not theirs, but the battle was the Lord's. However, He still required them to prepare for battle and to participate. Be sure that you're registered to vote. And how many of you will commit to registering 2 friends or family members in the next 30 days? How many can commit to 2 people, just 2? 2 friends, 2 family members, hopefully all living, that you can register to vote. And then third, take the pledge to vote on Election Day, and then send the iPledgeToVote.org link to your friends. Post it on your social media sites. And let's see if we can't get 1 million Christians to take the pledge to vote. How many will join me in that? God bless you. Stand with us as the First Baptist Praise Band closes us tonight in a song. Thank you so much for being here.
Lord, hear our cry. Come heal our land and breathe life into these dry and thirsty souls. And Lord, hear our prayer. Forgive our